Okay, so tonight we're diving into something seriously cool.
Oh, yeah.
Picture this, it's the 1800s, right?
Okay.
Like top hats and steam engines, but with a twist. What if reality itself started to kind of like tear?
Whoa.
And through these rips, you get this crazy tech popping up. Wyrd Tech, they call it.
Wyrd Tech.
Yeah, and things are crawling out that definitely shouldn't be here.
Oh.
It's like Big Trouble in Little China meets the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Okay, I'm with you.
But way more gears and a lot less bubblegum, you know?
Way more gears. I like it.
Yeah, and that's the backdrop for this RPG called Nightwatch.
Okay.
It mashes up that Victorian vibe with this really intense cosmic mystery.
Nice.
It's not just about looking cool with goggles and stuff.
Right.
It's about facing, like, the totally unknown.
I dig it.
So for everyone listening, think of yourselves as, like, insiders wanting the scoop on this whole Nightwatch thing.
Okay.
Like, you're wondering what makes it tick, how it actually plays, you know, with all the weird tech and monsters and stuff.
That's the big question, right?
Yeah, totally. So our mission today is to crack open Nightwatch,
I like it.
show you how it works, what makes the world so unique, and give you a taste of what a game session might be like.
Sweet.
This is your, like, express pass to understanding Nightwatch.
Buckle up.
Right. And man, is it a ride. Foggy streets, Lovecraftian horrors.
Spooky.
Yeah, and that old school pulp adventure feel like from a vintage comic book.
Nice.
And you play as, get this, an associate of Ishtar.
Ooh, mysterious.
Yeah, right. This secret group working to protect everyone from alien threats.
So like Men in Black Victorian style.
Kinda, but they also have to deal with the people who decide to team up with these aliens.
The double trouble.
Exactly. Imagine like the Ghostbusters having to report to Scotland Yard.
Now that's a team up I'd watch.
Right. But zooming out a bit, this whole setting is an alternate 19th century.
Okay.
And the thing is, these riffs, these tiers, in reality, they're a new thing.
So it's not just the usual historical stuff.
No way.
Okay.
It's not just monsters showing up. It's like aliens dropped a whole catalog of crazy gadgets.
Like Alien Amazon Prime.
Haha, yeah. And on top of that, some seriously mind-bending philosophies.
So the world is changing fast.
Super fast. It's this steampunk Cold War, with countries scrambling for the best tech.
Gotcha.
But here's the catch. You can't just grab an alien laser pistol and bring it back no problem.
Why not?
Anything physical crossing over starts falling apart. Traveler's decay, they call it.
Ah, so like a cosmic expiration date.
Exactly. But ideas, those travel just fine.
Interesting.
So you get these crazy inventions and beliefs popping up, inspired by stuff from beyond the rifts.
That's how you get Wyrd Tech.
You got it.
So how do you handle fights and action when things get dicey?
Right. That's where Nightwatch gets really cool. It's got this unique fortune card combat system.
Fortune cards.
Yeah, it keeps things unpredictable and exciting. Not just another dice-rolling slugfest.
I'm intrigued.
And get this, the game's print and play. You download the materials, you're good to go.
So you need like dice and stuff.
You'll need your usual set of polyhedral dice, from the 4-sided all the way to the 20-sided.
The classics.
And one special one, the boon die. It's a 6-sided die, and super important for pretty much every action you take.
Every action. Okay, I'm definitely curious now.
I bet. The cool thing is Nightwatch tries to bridge that gap between pen and paper RPGs like the old school D&D.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
And board games. There are even optional rules for using miniatures and grids.
So it's flexible.
Exactly. You can tailor it to your style.
Sweet. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. How does all this work?
Okay, so the basics are checks.
Okay.
Whenever you're doing something risky in the game, you make a check.
Checks. Okay.
The puppet master, that's the game master, the person running the game, they set a target number.
The target number, got it.
Usually 5 to start. So you roll some dice. If you hit that number or higher, you succeed.
Makes sense.
Simple, right?
Simple, but I bet there's more to it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So there are trait checks. Those are when you're just winging it, you know? No special training.
Like natural talent?
Yep.
Exactly. You just roll the die tied to that trait, like strength or intellect.
Got it.
But if you have skills, you make a skill check.
So like if you're trained in something specific.
Precisely. The dots next to your skill tell you what size die to roll.
So more dots, bigger die?
You got it. From a 4-sided die all the way up to a 12-sided.
Nice. So what about that special boon die you mentioned?
Oh yeah, the boon die. So every time you make a check, any check, you also roll this 6-sided die.
Okay.
Now if that boon die rolls higher than your normal trade die, you use the boon die result instead.
So it's like a second chance, sort of?
Kinda. It's like fate giving you a little boost.
I like those.
Me too.
Hmm.
And here's where it gets really cool. The boon die can also surge.
Surge, what's that?
If any die you roll, including the boon die, rolls its maximum result, like a 6 on a 6-sided die, you get to roll it again and add that to your total.
Whoa, that's awesome.
And you can keep surging as long as you keep rolling max numbers.
So it's like a chain reaction of
Yeah,
awesome.
exactly. Plus some perks. Those special abilities can activate when you surge.
So like landing a combo in Street Fighter and then getting to unleash a super move?
Uh-huh. Yeah. But hold on, because it's not all sunshine and surges.
Oh.
There's this thing called a debacle.
A debacle? That sounds ominous.
It is. So if you roll a 1 on both your trait die and your boon die, things go very wrong.
Like, how wrong are we talking?
Not just failing. You fail spectacularly. Maybe even hilariously. And you can't even use resolve to reroll.
No takebacks.
Ouch.
Nope.
It's like tripping on your shoelaces during a dramatic escape and landing face first in a mud puddle.
Not ideal.
Not at all. Then you have bonus dice. Some perks or even your gear can give you these extra 4-sided or 6-sided dice to roll with your check.
Okay.
They just add to your total, but they don't surge or cause debacles, thankfully.
So like a little extra oomph, but without the risk.
Exactly. Now for the really satisfying part, overkill.
Overkill. Lay it on me.
When you absolutely crush a check, like roll double the target number or more, you score an overkill. And the puppet master decides what extra benefits you get.
So like maybe you break down the door in one dramatic kick?
Huh. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe you convince that guard to spill all the secrets. A and D make you a sandwich.
No, that's overkill.
Right. And sometimes it's not just you against the game, it's you against another player.
Oh, player versus player.
That's where opposing roles come in. Say you're trying to outsmart another associate or win an arm wrestling contest.
Right.
You each roll the relevant trait or skill plus your boon die. Whoever rolls higher wins.
So it could get pretty competitive around the table.
It can. But remember, it's all in good fun.
Of course. Now we should talk about agents.
Right. Agents are like the big players in the game, both the player characters.
So that's us.
Yep. And the really important enemies the PM throws your way.
The big bads.
Exactly. They're tougher than your average goon. So when an agent's trying to avoid getting hit,
Like dodging an attack or something?
the PM might make it harder by adding extra dice to the target number they have to beat.
So being an agent is a double-edged sword.
Kinda. It means you're powerful, but the PM's gonna make you work for it.
Fair enough. What about those moments when players clash?
Oh, player versus player checks.
Yeah, like if we get into a disagreement and decide to settle it the old-fashioned way.
Uh-huh. Well, in Nightwatch, you just roll the relevant traits or skills against each other.
Including boon dice, I hope.
Always. Whoever rolls higher wins. Hopefully it doesn't lead to too much real-life drama, though.
We're all friends here, right?
Right.
Oh.
Okay, are you ready to dive into combat?
Hit me with it.
This is where things get really interesting. Nightwatch uses this system called the fortune system.
Okay, fortune system.
So when a fight breaks out, the game switches to combat rounds.
Rounds, got it.
A round is basically everyone gets a turn to do their thing.
Okay.
And on your turn, you can do up to 3 actions.
3 actions, all right?
But there's a catch. For every action you take after the first one in a round, you get a +1 penalty to all your checks.
Oh, so you can't just go all out, guns blazing without consequences.
Oh. Exactly. Going full action hero can backfire.
I like that adds some strategy.
Now to decide who goes first. Initiative Nightwatch uses these cool fortune cards.
Fortune cards, okay.
Yeah. At the start of combat, the PM creates a deck of 10 cards numbered 1 through 10.
All right.
They draw a card for each player and one for themselves. These are laid out face up. That's the crystal ball.
A crystal ball of cards. I like it.
If the player started the fight, like by kicking down a door or something, they get to pick their cards first.
Otherwise, the PM goes first.
Exactly. And in later rounds, whoever had the highest card the previous round picks first.
So there's some tactical thinking involved.
Definitely. You got to think about when to use your actions and which cards to grab.
So these fortune cards aren't just about going first, right?
Nope. Each card has a fortune effect, something good for the players, and a misfortune effect, something the PM can use against them.
So it's like a double whammy of fate.
Right. Plus, some cards have special fortune actions you can usually do for free.
Free action's nice? Like what?
Stuff like reloading your weapon or maybe getting a witty one-liner.
So it's not all serious business.
Definitely not. There's room for fun and flair in Nightwatch.
I like that.
And here's a cool twist. The PM can stack the deck before a round to create drama.
Stack the deck. How so?
Like if they know a huge monster is about to burst out, they might subtly arrange the fortune cards to reflect that.
So it's like foreshadowing, but with cards.
Exactly. It adds another layer of storytelling to the combat.
Very cool. So how do the bad guys work in combat?
Well, the basic bad guys' pawns, they usually get one move action and one attack action per round.
Okay, so they're not super complex.
But some tougher pawns might get to attack more than once. It depends on what the PM decides.
Right.
But they can't like sprint across the room and then shoot a bunch of times.
Got to keep things balanced.
Now let's talk about how you stay alive. Defense checks.
That sounds important.
When a pawn attacks you, you don't roll any dice.
Really?
Instead, you make a trait-based check, either using your hardiness
Hardiness.
or your agility. Okay, so two options. With hardiness, you add any armor you're wearing to your roll.
So armor is helpful.
Definitely. With
Okay.
agility, you don't get the armor bonus, but you're also not slowed down by heavy gear.
Makes sense. And you roll that boon die too, right?
Of course. Every check gets the boon die.
Yeah.
The target number you need to beat is based on the attacker's skill in either melee or ranged combat.
So it's not always the same difficulty.
Right. It depends on who's attacking and how good they are.
Makes sense.
Now, if you hit that number or higher, you successfully dodge or block the attack.
You're safe.
But if you don't, you take a wound.
Ouch.
And if the attacker's skill is double what you rolled, you take an extra wound.
Double ouch.
And just like with regular checks, rolling a debacle on a defense check means an extra wound. A&D, something else bad might happen.
Things just keep getting worse.
It can happen.
All right.
Now, what if you're facing a whole gang of enemies?
That doesn't sound good.
It can be tricky, but Nightwatch has rules for that. If you're surrounded in melee, it's called flanking.
Flanking.
Okay. The PM picks the enemy with the best attack skill and adds +2 to the target number of your defense check for every other enemy also ganging up on you.
So the more enemies, the harder it is to defend.
It can get really tough really fast.
I bet. What about ranged attacks? Like if someone's shooting at you from a distance?
That's good barrage.
Mm-hmm.
And it works pretty much the same way. The PM adds to the target number for each additional attacker.
Okay, so no matter how you're getting attacked, too many enemies is bad news.
Now let's talk offense.
Let's do it.
Say you want to punch someone in the face.
A classic.
In Nightwatch. That's a melee attack.
Yeah.
It's a combat check using your melee skill, and the target number is based on how good the enemy is at dodging.
Okay.
You roll your melee die plus the boon die. If you hit the target number or higher, you deal a wound.
Nice.
If you get an overkill, you deal extra wounds.
Sweet.
Now, if you're fighting without any skill or using something improvised, you roll a 4-sided die for your attack.
So like a bar fight.
Exactly.
Die.
But you still get that awesome boon die.
Every little bit helps.
Now, if you prefer to fight from afar, you can use a ranged attack.
Like with a gun or something.
Right. Each shot is a combat check, and it uses ammo. You can even try a called shot.
Called shot. What's that?
It costs you 3 actions and some ammo, but you get an extra 6-sided die on your attack roll.
Nice.
And if you hit, you get to choose some extra effect like dealing an extra wound or crippling a limb or breaking their weapon.
Ouch.
The PM gets the final say on what's possible.
Okay, so you do have to be reasonable.
You can also throw things or use grenades, which are agility checks to see where they land, but there's no attack roll for the explosion itself.
So it's like a scatter shot kind of thing.
Exactly. Now, once you land a hit and the enemy fails their defense check, it's time to figure out damage.
It's moment of truth.
So failing a defense check means you take a wound.
Okay.
And once you've taken more wounds than your hit points, which are tied to your hardiness trait, you're incapacitated.
Out of the fight.
Exactly. Most basic pawns only have 1 hit point, but agents can take more punishment. And each wound you take also adds a +1 penalty to all your checks, up to a maximum of +3.
So getting hurt makes everything harder.
It does. It makes staying in the fight that much more challenging.
I bet. Is all damage the same?
Not quite. There's special damage like corrosive acid, electric shocks, and fire.
Ouch, those sound nasty.
They can be. Armor only protects you for half its value against special damage.
Oh, that's good.
And fire can be especially brutal. For every fire wound you take, you get a fire token.
Fire tokens.
Each round, you have to spend an action trying to put out the fire with a hardiness or melee check.
So you could be burning while trying to fight.
That's the danger. And for each fire token you can't get rid of, you take another wound.
Double ouch. That's rough.
It is. But don't worry, there's a way to mitigate some damage.
Oh, thank goodness. What is it?
It's called soaking damage. You can spend some resolve.
Resolve those hero points we talked about.
Right. To make a hardiness check, to try and reduce the wounds you just took.
So it's like a last-ditch effort to tough it out.
Exactly. For every success and overkill on the check, you reduce the number of wounds by 1.
So if you roll really well, you could completely negate the damage.
You could. It's a gamble, but it could be a lifesaver.
So what happens when you're incapacitated?
Well, you're out of the fight, but you still get dealt fortune cards.
Just in case something crazy happens.
Exactly. If you're stunned, you can try to shake it off each round with a hardiness check.
So you might be able to get back in the action.
You might, but you'll probably be dazed even if you succeed.
Okay, so there are lingering effects.
If you fail the check, you're out of commission for a while.
And if you're really badly hurt?
Well, that's where things can get pretty dramatic.
Oh, how so?
You have the option to choose to be maimed instead of being fully incapacitated.
Maimed? That sounds serious.
It is. It means a part of your body is permanently injured.
Yikes. But what's the benefit?
Well, if you choose to be maimed, you get back up to 1 hit point.
So you can keep fighting.
And if you pass a hardiness check right then and there, you get an extra hit point on top of that.
So it's risky, but it could keep you alive.
Exactly. It's a desperate gamble.
High stakes. So how does resolve work exactly?
Resolve is like your emergency reserve. You can spend it to re-roll any trait check.
Except debacles, right?
Right. No escaping those. You can also use resolve to soak damage or even swap out a fortune card in combat.
So it's like having a few tricks up your sleeve.
Exactly. And if the puppet master is feeling generous, you might be able to spend resolve to nudge the story a little bit.
Like what?
Maybe you spot a crucial clue that you otherwise wouldn't have, or you convince someone to give you information.
So it's not just for combat?
Nope. It's a way to influence the narrative and give your character a bit more agency.
Cool. And even the PM's villains can have resolve, right?
Right. So everyone has a bit of wiggle room.
Makes sense. So let's say you get banged up pretty good. How do you heal up in this game?
Well, there's first aid. If you take about 15 minutes and pass a first aid or surgery check, you can heal 1 wound for each success.
Okay.
But you can only do this once per day.
So you can't just patch yourself up after every fight.
Right. You gotta be more strategic about it.
What about if someone's totally out cold?
You can try to stabilize them with first aid or the surgeon perk.
So you gotta be at least somewhat skilled in medicine.
It helps.
Mm-hmm.
To stabilize someone, you need to pass 2 intellect or agility checks.
Okay.
If you pull it off, they regain a bit of health. But if they're way down in negative hit points, they'll need actual surgery in a medical facility to fully recover.
So you can't just magic them back to health.
And if you're bleeding out, which happens when you're deep in the negative hit points, things get really dicey.
How so?
At the start of each combat round, you have to make a hardiness check. If you fail, you lose another wound.
Ouch.
If you hit -8 hit points, that's it. You're dead.
Game over.
If you succeed, the bleeding stops, but you're still unconscious.
So there's a chance of survival.
Roll an overkill, and you stabilize and stay unconscious.
Yeah.
And a debacle. Well, let's just say you bleed out faster.
Not good. So is there a way to heal naturally?
You can try. Each day, after a full day of rest, you can make up to 2 hardiness checks.
Okay.
Each success heals 1 wound.
So it takes time?
And if you roll a debacle, it takes twice as long to heal from that wound.
Double ouch.
If you have the medicine skill, you can try to speed things up once a day with an intellect check.
So being smart helps you heal faster.
And on top of all that, there are all sorts of conditions that can mess with you in Nightwatch.
Like what kind of conditions?
You could be ensnared, tangled up, and unable to move or act.
Okay, that sounds inconvenient.
Incapacitated. Totally out of the fight. Intoxicated, which makes you clumsy and unpredictable.
Uh-oh.
Maimed, which comes with bleeding and other nasty side effects. Paralyzed, which means you need a discipline check to even move. Or simply unconscious.
So basically a whole lot of ways to be taken out of commission.
This game doesn't pull any
It
punches.
sounds intense. And it's not just physical threats, right?
Nope. Nightwatch also has discipline checks.
Discipline checks.
You use your intellect or charisma to resist mental trauma surprise attacks or someone trying to mess with your head.
Oh, so like resisting mind control or something?
Exactly.
Cool. And what happens if you fail a discipline check?
You can end up with a mental condition.
A mental condition? Like what?
You could be dazed and only able to do one thing each round.
Okay, that's limiting.
Demoralized, which means your dice can't surge.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Distracted,
Yeah.
which makes it harder to notice things.
Oh, ooh.
Or gripped by fear, which might make you run away.
So you could literally be scared out of your wits.
It can happen. Or even worse, you could be terrified, completely unable to act.
So keeping your cool is just as important as being tough.
Absolutely. Now, who are you going up against in this crazy world?
Yeah, who are the baddies?
Well, there are pawns and agents.
We talked about agents already, right?
Right. Those are the important characters, both players and enemies.
Okay, so what are pawns?
Pawns are your standard goons. The nameless monsters and cultists you'll be fighting.
The cannon fodder.
The default target number for checks against them is that TN5 we talked about.
So they're not pushovers, but they're not super tough either.
Exactly. Agents, on the other hand, are the named villains, the recurring threats, the ones with backstories.
Okay, so they're the ones to watch out for.
Every NPC, whether they're a pawn or an agent, has a set of traits.
Traits like what?
Things like how good they are at hitting up close, melee, shooting from a far range, dodging, dodge, escaping, evasion, their smarts, intellect, how much punishment they can take, hit points, and how tough their skin is, armor.
Okay, so a whole stat block like in D&D.
Exactly. Armor, as we talked about, adds to their defense, making them harder to hit.
Right.
And some NPCs have special qualities that give them an edge.
Like what kind of qualities?
Things like bite, which can grapple,
Yeah.
the cleave, which lets them hit everyone around them, or pack hunter, which makes them stronger when attacking as a group.
Sounds like a lot of variety.
There's a ton. The Quick Start Guide even has a bestiary section with stats for different creatures.
Cool. What kind of creatures are we talking?
You've got your typical thugs and elite guards,
Okay. The human dooms?
but then you've got things like guard dogs and even a terrifying mega sloth.
A mega sloth. That's awesome.
It's pretty intense. You could also face a cyborg, a mind-controlling fascinator drone, or a clockwork security automaton.
So there's a real mix of the mundane and the fantastical.
Absolutely. It's one of the things that makes Nightwatch so unique.
So we've got our traits, and then there are skills, right?
Right. And each dot you put into a skill unlocks cool perks.
Perks like special abilities.
Exactly. They add a lot of flavor to your character and can really change how you play the game.
Cool. What are some examples?
Well, if you're good at athletics, you might get perks like Climber, which makes it easier to scale walls, or Marathoners, which gives you a bonus to endurance challenges.
So like a parkour expert.
Huh. Yeah, kinda.
Yeah.
If you're into crafting, you might get percussive engineering, which lets you fix things by hitting them really hard.
That's awesome.
For investigation, you've got deducer and forensics to help you solve mysteries.
So like Sherlock Holmes with some extra gadgets.
And if you're a brawler, you could learn Savate or Street Fighter moves.
That's awesome.
There are tons of options for all kinds of skills, from piloting vehicles to using different guns, from picking locks to sneaking around, even just surviving in the wilderness.
Sounds like you can build any kind of character you want.
That's the beauty of it. Okay, are you ready to see how all this comes together in an actual game?
Hit me with it.
Okay, so we've got this sample adventure called The Shed at Tober Road.
Okay. Sounds intriguing.
Picture this. You're an associate who's just wandered off the main streets and ended up in this place called Tober Row.
Okay.
It's muddy, smells awful, like something died in there.
Not a pleasant place.
Definitely run down. It's busy, but there's this shady vibe in the air.
Gotcha.
And your character is looking for a specific warehouse mentioned in a cryptic note.
Okay, so they're on a mission.
The PM describes the area saying most of the buildings are just these rickety sheds.
Not very helpful.
Right. It makes it harder to find the right one.
So what does the player do?
They decide to look for someone who seems out of place, like a guard or their contact.
Makes sense.
They make a perception check, and with a little help from the boon die, they spot a Weasley-looking dude lurking in an alley.
Ooh, suspicious.
The player wants to get a better read on him, so they ask if he seems nervous.
Okay.
The PM describes him as more impatient and fidgety than actually scared.
Interesting.
Now the player decides to get a bit more direct. They stroll over, trying not to seem threatening, and use their size to try and intimidate the guy.
Bold move.
They ask if he has a watch as an excuse to get close.
A classic tactic.
This calls for a body check.
Okay.
Even though their roll on the trait die is shaky, that trusty boon die comes through again.
Saving the day.
The suspect shrinks back, but denies having a watch.
But he's lying, right?
Oh yeah, his eyes are darting all over the place.
So the player tries to catch him in a lie?
They do. They make an intellect check to try and read his tells. They botch it. The suspect seizes the opportunity and tries to make a run for it.
What does the player do?
They give chase. And because their character has the physically fit perk, the PM calls for a series of hardiness checks.
Like a foot race?
Exactly. Best 3 out of 5.
I love that. So it's not just one roll, it's a whole mini game.
And it's described really dramatically. The player gains ground, then stumbles a bit, But then they get a surge,
Nice.
leading to an overkill. They tackle the suspect into a muddy heap.
That's gotta hurt.
Now it's interrogation
I need
time.
to get some answers.
The player pins the guy down and starts asking about lost cargo and a warehouse.
Okay.
The suspect plays dumb, but a little persuasion involving his face, and the ground loosens his tongue.
A bit rough, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do.
He eventually points towards a nearby shed.
So they're getting somewhere.
The player follows him, keeping the pressure on. They reach a padlocked door, and the suspect reluctantly gives up the key.
Okay.
Inside the storage room smells like animal feces. Yeah, it's not a pleasant place. The suspect points to another door, this one barred from the inside,
Okay.
and he seems really nervous about it.
I bet. What does the player do?
They press him, obviously. A little encouragement with their knife convinces him to open the door,
Things are getting intense.
and here comes the twist. As the door creaks open, the suspect freezes in terror.
Oh, what is it?
The player fails a discipline check,
That's never good.
and suddenly this huge dog leaps out and attacks the suspect.
A dog.
Yeah, but not a normal dog.
Yeah.
It's described as being about the size of a Doberman, but with ghost-like fur.
That's creepy.
And the attack is brutal. This is not a friendly pup.
So what does the player do?
They jump into the fight using their knife. They manage to land a hit, but then miss their next swing.
Okay.
The ghostly hound retaliates, and the player takes a nasty bite on their arm.
Remember that +1 penalty for being wounded.
Exactly. It makes things even harder.
So what happens next?
The player manages to get another hit, and this time scoring an overkill. They take down the hound, but it's not a pretty sight.
I bet.
The aftermath is grim, the suspect is dead, and the player feels this horrible itching on their wound.
Like an infection.
They think so.
Yeah.
They fail another discipline check. Things are not looking good.
Bad to work.
They've